Thank you all so much for being here with us this evening. Thanks for spending on Wednesday a couple hour and a half or so with us, maybe this Wednesday evening. My name is Rainey Tebow. I am a member of New England Dairy. We are an education and research-based nonprofit here in the region working to connect dairy farmers with local schools, health professionals, thought leaders, and of course, all of you guys at home. I'm based out of Vermont here, but I'm excited to join all of you on a super exciting tour we will be taking over in Connecticut. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items. You are all muted as viewers at home, but you do have the option to use that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Just type in your question there, and we will do our best to get those answered live right on the farm. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our website, New England Dairy. You'll also get a follow-up email with a link to the recording. And make sure to check out our website, New England Dairy, for lots of great dairy farm and dairy nutrition information. We've got some amazing videos, blog posts, recipes, links to meet other dairy farmers across New England. And we, of course, invite all of you to follow us and stay connected on social media at New England Dairy. And you'll meet her in a minute, the real star of the show, our host, Amanda Freund, but you can follow her at CowPotsGirl. So again, a reminder that this tour is live, guys, and we have had some weather move in, so we might see a few glitches in the connection here. We're going to start on cell phone service and switch over to Wi-Fi. So if the connection is a bit grainy, just stick with us. We will get that sorted out as quick as we can, but we do have a fun tour ahead for you. So let's meet our host before we get to the farm. Amanda Freund is a third-generation dairy farmer. Her farm is a member of the Agrimark Dairy Cooperative. She's a young YC for the cooperative. She's a Cornell University graduate. She spent 2 years in Zambia with the Peace Corps. And you can learn more about her story, her journey at girlintheplaidshoes.com. So, beautiful shot here of the Freund family. Can't say enough of a big thank you to all of them for hosting our tour this evening. The family began farming in East Canaan, Connecticut in 1949. Over the past 70 years, the operation has diversified. You'll learn about the ways in which they have done that on the tour tonight. And they are a member owner of the dairy farming cooperative, Agrimark, which produces the Cabot cheeses we all love and can find throughout the region. The Freund farm and their family of employees care for a milking herd of about 300 Holsteins, and they crop 600 acres growing their own feed. They run a local farm stand selling produce. They also have a successful production facility where they manufacture a product called cowpots, which you will learn about tonight. So enough for me. Let's get live to the farm to meet our host, Amanda Freund. Amanda, how are you over there? Looks like we're starting on one of the most popular spots on the farm. How are you?
That's right, Rainey. Thank you. I am really, really good, especially since it's not raining yet, even though we have been praying for the rain, so I'm not mad about it. But it did mean that we changed the sequence of events. Usually I leave our baby calves as our final stop because it's the stop that everyone looks forward to. But instead, today, we're starting with the babies because they're outside. So, like Rainey said, I'm third generation on my family's dairy farm here, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend your Wednesday evening with me. So I look forward to showing you around and answering your questions. So please use that Q&A box, and we will get to as many questions as we can. So you can see that I'm standing here next to what's about a 6-week-old heifer calf, and heifer is the word that we use for female. And so she's obviously spending quite a bit of time right next to me because she really likes sucking on things. So I've kept her preoccupied for the past 10 minutes sucking on my hand. But it's for this reason that we actually have our calves living in separate pens like this. So there's a lot of people that are familiar with these white hutches, but they don't always know what they're used for. And so the reason that we keep our calves this way in a white house like this with the fencing around it is that it keeps each of the calves separated from one another so they're not sucking on each other all the time. We can monitor exactly how much food and water they consume every single day. So just like when you have a baby, if they're not eating, that's something that you want to be attentive to really, really quickly. And so we can do that by monitoring exactly how much they're eating. So each of these babies are fed 3 times a day. They get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So these babies are all still getting milk. Their grain is inside their hutch because we're expecting rain, so we want to keep it dry. And then she's got fresh drinking water here in front of her. And so the other thing that's really beneficial about that hutch is that when it's nice and cool and the clouds are in the sky, it's really comfortable for her to hang out outside. But if it's really hot and she wants some shade, or if she wants protection from the rain, she's got somewhere to go. So we raise all of the female calves that are born here on our farm, which will eventually grow up to be the dairy cows that are going to move into our robot barn, which we're going to go visit in a little bit. And so it's really important that we track their health on a daily basis. So being able to see each of these calves 3 times a day keeps us really in tune with the fact that they're reaching their growth gain or their growth goals, and that if there's anything that stands out, if they look like they're not as happy, if their ears are hanging down, kind of like if you have a dog at home, you can read some body language to indicate when they're not feeling so good. We do the same thing with our babies. Are there any questions that you've gotten, Rainey, about our baby calves?
Yo, there are plenty of them, Amanda. So first off, how many baby calves do you guys have on the farm typically?
Yeah, it's changing. I would say that we probably have about a baby every day. So on average, one cow has one baby per year, and so I would say there's a newborn just about every day. Sometimes we're really lucky and we get 4 in one day. um, but right now, I would say that we're caring for probably about 40 babies that are between the ages of just born this morning. We actually had 3 babies this morning, all the way up to about 11 or 12 weeks old.
Vivian is wondering how old this young lady might be right here.
So her birthday was on June 9th. So that's actually one of the pieces of information that we put on her ear tag. So we actually get a lot of questions also, and maybe you might have gotten one already about their ear tags. So this ear tag gives us a couple different pieces of information. One, her ID number is 39. So that way we can track her progress um, from the moment she's born all the way through the rest of her life in our barn. So if she needs any special treatment or attention, we all know, because it's not just me working on this farm. I've got a lot of teammates that we all need to be on the same page. So being able to identify our cows is obviously important. The other bit of information is her birthday. And then lastly, if she wants to turn her head just right, you'll see that the word whisker is written on her ear tag. And that is actually the name of her sire, which means that's her dad's name. So that's information that we also want to keep track of.
So Marcia Lehman is wondering what breed of cow we might be looking at right here, and is that the breed that you guys prefer at the farm?
Yeah, all of the cows on our farm are Holsteins. So that's a black and white breed. And so you'll see this one is mostly white, but when we go in our barn, you'll see a bunch that are mostly black. But they are well suited for making lots of good, high quality milk. And so that's why that's the breed that we choose to have here on our farm.
So Amanda, this is not a short joke by any means, but she's already about half your height. How big are calves when they're normally born?
They're usually about 70 pounds. And so she's probably doubled in size and maybe even a little bit more than that. But yeah, I sometimes am confident and think, oh, no problem. I'll just pick this newborn baby up. And then I sometimes don't make it all the way up to a standing position. So I'm still working on my weightlifting. But to the point about their size, a really interesting note is that their first feeding is 1 gallon of colostrum. So colostrum is the milk that we get from a new mom. That's the very first milk that she gives us, and that's what's full of antibodies that this baby needs as soon as possible. And so we milk the mom. We test that colostrum to make sure that it has the right protein level and that it's the right quality. And then this is what a newborn baby is going to get on her first feeding, hopefully within the first 4 hours of being born. So I can't imagine feeding 1 gallon of milk to a baby human. So obviously the size is very different, but that quantity, that volume is really important for her health for the rest of her life. That basically sets the baseline for how building up her immune system.
Mhm. So Trina Young has a very important question for you. She is wondering, why do you separate the calves from their mothers? Can you go into
Yeah, that
on that?
that that is a common question, and I'm really happy that you asked it because I feel like a lot of people assume certain things about that, and I wanna tell you exactly why we do that. So usually we let mom clean up baby, and these babies are usually walking within 45 minutes to an hour. And I've actually got some really cool video footage that you're gonna see in a little bit. But they get up and they're walking very quickly after they're born. And so we want to make sure that both baby is getting all the care and attention and the things that she needs, and mom's getting all the things that she needs. So we move mom into our robot barn so that we can milk her, and she's going to return with the rest of her herd mates. And there we can provide her the mixed ration, the balanced diet that she needs, and we can bring this baby into our nursery where she is going to be surrounded by a bunch of other babies that are her age. And so this way we can monitor and track exactly how much baby is eating, but we do make sure that mom gets her cleaned up and that she's walking around before we take mom to our barn to get her milked.
Hmm. We've gotten a couple questions. Folks are wondering what happened to the male calves. Well, what do you guys do with the boys?
Yeah, so one of the really cool things that I would say about our food system and sustainability is that the boy calves, while they don't have a purpose for us on our dairy farm, they actually serve a really important purpose for the food system. So they will be picked up every week, and they'll go to auction and be raised for meat. And so I think that whether or not you choose to have meat in your diet is your choice. But the fact that there's no waste there, that they actually serve a really important purpose for nutrition and providing protein for people that do choose to have meat in their diet.
Hmm. Trevor has a very interesting question. I think it's a really, really cool one. He is wondering if cows stand when they sleep.
No, so I know where that question is coming from because horses have a tendency to do that. But we actually, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when we go in the barn, our cows lay down when they're sleeping. Sometimes you'll see them kind of like dozing off while they're standing and chewing their cud, but our cows lay down when they sleep, and we'll go and check some of those out. So I want to next talk to you about our pregnant cows. So I've got a cool video that I took earlier this week that they're going to pull up for you because we can't make it over to our pen where our pregnant cows are right now. But what you're going to see is a new mom that just had a baby. And this is like one of my favorite scenes to be able to walk in on and just be able to take the joy out of because you can see mom is just busy cleaning off that baby calf, and that actually is part of the important stimulation to getting that baby kind of aware of the fact that she is now on planet Earth with us, and gets her motivated to stand up and hopefully get her first meal. But so we intentionally separate out the cows that are due to have their baby about 2 months before their due date. So we track very closely all of our cows and where they are in respect to age and their pregnancy. And so just like humans, cows have a 9-month gestation. So we know when they're bred because we do that insemination here on the farm. And so we can monitor them the whole time they're pregnant. And so, unlike with humans, where our maternity leave is usually after we have a baby, with cows, maternity leave usually happens 2 months before they have their baby. So, we will remove them from our milking barn and we will dry them off. So, that's the term that we use here on our dairy farm. And so that means that for the 2 months leading up to her having a baby, she's not producing milk. She is focused on just eating, sleeping, hanging out with her friends, and roaming around the barn. And so we have two different pens. One, our close-up pen is where all of our cows that are within the next 3 weeks of their due date. So we check on that pen multiple times a day, and it's actually the last stop I make before I go home for the night, just to see if anybody is coming close to having a baby. And so usually the signs are their udder starts to fill up, their teats get kind of waxy, they might be standing in their bed or standing in the alley and they're shifting their weight from side to side. And any of you moms out there, you might recognize some of these signs from when you were getting ready to have your baby. But so we're cued into that. We want to monitor that because we then have a special little separated pen like you see that mom and her baby in, where it's dry, clean, fresh bedding, where she can have a private space and she can have that calf where it's safe and she doesn't need to worry about anybody else coming into her space. And then from there, we can take baby to the nursery and we can take mom to our milking barn.
So Amanda, really interesting question here as you're moving. Tanya is curious if cows ever get ultrasounds, and I think we'll talk about that relationship with your veterinarian throughout the tour. But could you speak to that right now?
Yeah, so on this farm, we actually test for whether or not our cows are pregnant with a blood test. So
Okay.
every Monday morning, we will take a small little blood sample and we'll send that out for a test. But there's plenty of other farms that actually use ultrasound. And so they will use a wand just like is used with a human, and they can identify whether or not mom is pregnant, and how far along she is, and even if she has twins, with using ultrasound. So that technology is absolutely used by dairy farms.
Some folks are wondering how often, as the farmer, your employees, how often do you have to get hands-on in helping a mama have her birth?
Not that often. I would say we can go a couple of months without ever having to step in. Usually, the reason that we would need to step in is if it's a breech calf, just like we use that term in humans. So, if that baby is not positioned in exactly the right way, which is her two front legs and her head pointing out. So, if we see that mom's been trying for a while, and we can go and check, and if we see two legs, but then there's also a tail, that means that baby's coming out backwards. And so in that instance, we're gonna step in because as soon as that umbilical cord rips, we've got a calf that needs to have access to air. So we're gonna step in as needed, but for the most part, it's a natural occurrence that we don't need to interfere with. So on that note, I think I'm gonna have, I actually hear thunder. So I'm so glad that we made a point of visiting our babies outside, and we're gonna move into the barn. And Rainey, you're gonna do a quick poll.
Yes, yeah. You guys get on the way, and we'll do a fun poll for folks at home. So when everybody at home sees the poll come up, take a few seconds, talk it over as the family, and come up with your answer, your best guess at the answer for the couple polls that we'll bring up. So number one here, on average, how many gallons of milk does a cow produce in one day? So we'll give you some time. Give that your best guess. Hopefully you're not using Google and relying on your knowledge. All right, everybody. Take a shot at answering number one here. All right. Hey, well done. 41%, 6 to 8 gallons, and you are all, those 131 folks got that right. Appreciate everybody taking a chance to answer our first poll question here. I think we've got one more for you here as the Amanda in the video team moves into our next location. So, next question, about how many dairy farms are there in New England? So take a couple seconds, think about this one. Give us your best answer. So this is a tough one. Of course, it's a number that it fluctuates quite a bit. But 1,200 is a rough number that we like to go by here in New England. So, we certainly want to see as many farms, new operations come into play as possible. So 1,200, well done to those 58 folks who, about 18% of you that went with 1,200. So thank you very much for participating. We've got a couple more later on in the show, but I think with that, we'll head back to Amanda, who is over in the barn now.
Hi, yes. So we made it from outside to inside, and now we're on Wi-Fi. So hopefully it'll be smooth sailing from here. So whenever I walk into the barn, especially on a hot summer day, I love to ask the people that are with me. Obviously, you're not here to fit, but it is probably 10 to 15 degrees cooler in here, and that is by design. So we've actually spent a lot of time and energy thinking about how we can keep our cows cool during the summer. So cows actually are most comfortable at like 40 to 50 degrees. So winter is no problem for them. But when we've got a 90-degree day, they are not too happy. So some of the things that we've done here is that we've got our barn set up so that it's east-west orientation, so that we get a good, nice airflow through this barn so that there's lots of good, clean air. We've got these variable speed fans that actually have misters on them. So they will, depending on what the temperature is, because these are all controlled by a thermostat, they will actually turn misters on, and it will put some nice water on the backs of our cows and keep them cool. You can see it's still really hot out, so those fans are going pretty hard. The ceiling in this barn is actually insulated, so that helps kind of protect from some of the heat from that sun. And alternatively, in the winter, we can close up the curtains on the side walls of this barn and close the doors down. And just with the amount of body heat that these cows generate, it always stays above freezing. Or we never have to turn any kind of heat on. These cows are basically a whole bunch of heaters. So one other thing that you'll notice, these cows are not all hanging out here because they're intrigued by me, but this is where they come to get their feed. And so I'm the one who actually makes the food for our cows each morning. I'm the cow chef. And so there's actually 4 different ingredients that goes into what our cows are eating. And we actually work with a nutritionist that focuses exclusively on dairy cows. So he analyzes the forages that we grow, which is grass and corn. Those are the 2 crops that we grow on our fields. And he then will create a mix, a blend that will meet their nutritional needs so that we are keeping them happy and healthy and they're able to produce good quality milk. So I've laid out each of the ingredients here on this table. So they are getting a grain blend that he actually puts together for us based on what they need to supplement their diet after we include our forages. We also buy in this dry straw. So that helps with some roughage, something for them to chew on. And then we've got, this is cut up grass, but we actually harvest it while it's still wet. And so it ferments. Oftentimes it's compared to making sauerkraut. So when we bring this in from the field, we drive over it and pack it down to get all the oxygen out so that we have good quality feed all year round. And then the last ingredient that we're feeding our cows is corn silage. So this is actually the entire corn plant all chopped up into little pieces. So you might be able to see we've got some kernels in there. You can see where there's the leaf and the stalk. And we make it into these tiny little bite-sized portions. And then I follow a recipe, just like if you were baking a cake. I follow a recipe to then make this exact blend. And we call this a partial mixed ration, but the goal is that we want to feed our cows kind of the way that you would feed your 2-year-old child. if we put peas on the side of their plate, they could very easily push those peas off their plate and decide they didn't want to eat them. But when we mix it all together into one mix like this, every biteful is the same nutritional value. So we try to prevent them from being able to sort out the ingredients that they don't want to eat. So another really cool thing that you might notice on our cows when we get close enough, but they are all wearing a collar like this. So this is called a rumination collar. And so rumination is kind of just a fancy word for chewing. But we are tracking a couple different things with this collar. It sits just behind their left ear. And so it is one, recording how many times they chew, because just like with our babies where we want to monitor how much food they consume, we want to keep track of if our cows aren't chewing as much in a day, that might indicate that they have a bellyache. So we can go and we can pay some attention to them. It also is a activity tracker. So it works a lot like the Fitbit that I'm wearing. So it is actually recording her activity in this barn. And lastly, all of that information and identifying who she is when she comes to the robot to get milked, which we're going to visit in a little bit. This helps us identify who she is and gives her the path to come on into the robot. Are there any questions so far about our feed, about keeping our cows cool, or these rumination collars?
Yeah, Amanda, there are a couple folks are wondering, as the chef on the farm, putting those cooking skills to use, how early in the morning do you have to get up and get into the barn?
That is a common question, and I admittedly have it pretty easy. I know a lot of farmers that get up at 3 or 4 in the morning, but I start my day at 7 a.m. So it's not too bad. But so I usually have the first load of fresh feed down for these cows because we give them fresh feed every single day by 7:30 a.m.
Folks are wondering, you spoke about the ear tags earlier, Amanda, but they're wondering if it hurts when those are placed on the ear as for the calves.
Yeah, good question. So it's kind of like getting your ear pierced. So it certainly has a pinch sensation when you get your ears pierced, but we make sure to spray it down with hydrogen peroxide to help prevent them from getting any infection. And within an hour, I mean, you would not even tell that that calf was bothered by us at all. So we usually try to do it around feeding time so that just like with a baby, if you distract them with something that they want to focus their attention on, it is a good way to kind of get their mind focused on something else. So it's a quick pinch, and then it passes.
Yeah. Folks are wondering, going back to the feed, the TMR there, how or when do those ratios change, or do they ever need to change? Is it different for milking cows than some of the other animals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we probably send in a sample of each of the individual ingredients to be analyzed probably almost once a month. And so if when we change from 2018 harvested corn to 2019 harvested corn, there's obviously going to be a change in the nutritional profile of that crop. So we'll send that in, and at that point, our nutritionists will review that analysis and then make any necessary changes. And additionally, our milking cows are burning a lot of calories. It is a workout to make milk. And so we need to supply them with a balanced diet that has enough energy to meet that need. Our dry cows, those are the cows that we've taken out of this barn and are due to have their baby, they're basically just lounging around all day. So we cut a lot of energy out of that diet, and it's got a lot more straw in it. Because they don't need such a packed, dense diet.
So Wendy Strange has a question for you. And thinking back to the preparation, I think you mentioned there was one love bug in the barn somewhere. Do you have a favorite cow?
Oh, you just made me think. Like I didn't even think to look for where my love bug is and if she came up to visit. So I would say there is one in particular that certainly gets a lot of attention. She doesn't seem to want to come up to the bunk right now. But yeah, one thing that I've learned with this robot barn is that we've discovered a lot of very unique personalities in this barn. So there's some cows that will go and try to get milked 15 times. They'll just keep on doing U-turns around the robot, and the robot keeps on forcing them to leave. But I don't know that I have a favorite, but I certainly know the ones that are real characters. So at this point, we're gonna go on into our robot room. And so while we're heading over that way, you're gonna watch a quick time lapse that I took to see what it looks like for a cow to get milked from start to finish. So the video is about 30 seconds. And just for your frame of reference, it took about 6.5 minutes in real time to take that time lapse. So I'll meet you over in the robot room next.
Perfect. Sounds good, Amanda. So we will play that video, folks. So check this out. Pretty cool technology that Amanda will speak to in about 30 seconds.
Just stop.
All right. So it looks like Amanda is ready for us. We'll send it back in there. So Amanda, we just saw the video. Give us a sense of what we saw, what was going on there.
Yeah, so basically, here, we'll keep on walking this way to see if we've got a cow getting milked over here. So we have 5 of these robots in our barn. And so basically the way it works is that when a cow decides that she's ready to get milked, there's nobody in this barn right now. These cows are choosing to come to the robot because they decided it's time to get milked. So when they walk in, there's a little camera above that will record who they are based on that collar they're wearing. And if enough time has passed since the last time she was milked, it will go ahead and start the process. So basically, this is the robot arm, and it comes in, and you can see what it's doing right now is it was doing a pre-treatment. So it was going through and it was cleaning each of those teats with that brush. And now that each of those teats have been cleaned, it's connecting the inflations to each of her 4 teats. And it's doing that using lasers. So that's how it knows where to precisely put each of those lasers. So back up a little bit because that's going to rinse off as soon as it detects that there's milk flowing. So you can, she's standing pretty still for this. One, because she knows exactly what to expect. Every time she visits this robot, she gets the same exact treatment and the way that it makes contact with her. So what we just saw was that it rinsed off that brush. So that's my indication. I know that that means that the robot has detected that there is milk flowing from all 4 of her quarters, all 4 of her teats. The other reason that she's standing pretty still right now is that in addition to having the desire to release the pressure of being milked, because obviously as her udder fills up, she wants to relieve that pressure, but she also is getting a treat of grain. So one of the really awesome things about this robot system is that we can individualize our cow's diet. So as you saw before, I would have no way to give one cow a specific ration and another cow a different ration. That's not, our open buffet doesn't work that way. But when they come to this robot, the computer system actually keeps track of exactly how much milk they're making and will give her the amount of grain that matches that milk production. So a cow that gives us 80 pounds of milk a day is gonna get more grain than a cow that makes 50 pounds of milk a day. Because she's burning more energy. So right now, this cow is staying very preoccupied eating her grain. So we've got some real-time information that's being collected while this cow's being milked. So right now, the cow number that's in there is 7128. She's been in the pen or in this robot for 3 minutes and 26 seconds. And on average, it takes her about 7 minutes and 20 seconds while she's here, she's going to get just under 5 pounds of grain. And so far in her visit, she's given us 8 pounds of milk. And so you can see that's what it looks like as the milk is passing into the milk jar. So after every visit, when she's all done, the robot is going to empty out this milk jar and it's going to let in the very next cow. Are there any questions about milking our cows with robots?
Lots and lots of questions, Amanda. So first off, why are those cows waiting behind the current one being milked to enter the system?
Yeah, so they actually, sometimes cows display some nice manners, sometimes not so much. There are a few bossy girls out there, and if they decide that it's their turn to get milked, they might push the cow in front of them out of the way. But basically, every cow in this barn has her own schedule. Some are coming to get milked twice a day, and some are getting milked 4 times a day. And so we have a little open area in front of this robot, and so it's kind of a place for cows to casually saunter over to, and sometimes they dilly-dally for a while, and sometimes they're straight to the point. They come right into the robot, and they get milked. And then, I didn't mention this before, but our barn is called a free stall barn. So that means that our cows get to roam around all the different ends of the barn as they desire. We also have some really cool back scratchers. So when a cow feels like she wants to go get a back scratch, she goes on up, pushes up on it, and it starts rotating. She can go lie down when she wants. She can go eat when she wants. But another thing that's really important to cow comfort and health is socialization. So these cows, they've got their cliques, and they're hanging out with each other and their friends all day long. So from here, and I'm certainly happy to answer another robot question, but we're going to start heading over to our milk house. What other questions do you have about robots?
Definitely. So Amanda, people are curious, when you guys installed the robotic systems, how long did it take the cows to get used to the robots and entering to get milked?
Yeah, that's such a good question. It was a long, harrowing few weeks. I would say comfortably that after about 3 weeks, we started to feel like our cows were getting the hang of it. But it was, I mean, we had people working in this barn 24 hours a day to be able to introduce our cows to the robot and remind them. So, hey, girls, this is where you're going to come get milked now. So it was, you had to have a lot of patience. We actually wrote on the walls, don't yell at the cows. Because at 4 in the morning, sometimes you would get a little grumpy. But I would say now, after the fact, it was such a cool move because really, we made the decision to use robots for the wellness of our cows and the fact that they've got the freedom to choose when and how often they get milked.
Very cool. So Amanda, we've seen how the cows are milked. Where are we now? What's the next step in the process?
Yeah, so this is what it like all the work that we do from taking care of the land to grow the crops, taking care of those babies, having those robots, all of that leads up to here. So this is our milk room. And the tank behind me actually has the capacity to hold 2 days worth of our milk. So this is a 50,000 pound tank. And so we on an average day are sending out about 23,000 pounds. And so the benefit of having a tank that has that capacity is that if there's a bad winter storm, which there have been, and the milk truck can't get here, we have the ability to still store some of that milk. But what's really cool is that the milk, when it leaves this farm, within 48 hours, it went from being here on my farm to being likely in the grocery store where you're buying your milk. So it's a super fresh product. So you don't even have to go to the farmer's market all the time to get a local and a fresh product. The grocery store has some really fresh milk. And so a few of the other things to be mindful of here is just like your refrigerator at home, we need to keep this milk stored at the same temperature as your refrigerator, which is between 39 and 42 degrees. So we track that temperature on this chart here. So right now, the milk in our tank is just under 39 degrees. And we keep obviously a very close eye on that because we want to make sure that the milk that leaves our farm is the highest possible quality. And one of the ways that we get it to that temperature, and one of the things, Rainey, do you know this? What's the temperature of a cow?
Oh man, I'm not sure if I know my own temperature. 100 degrees.
All right, that's pretty close.
Yeah.
So a cow's average temperature is about 101.3. And so obviously the temperature of her milk is going to be the same. And so this is something that most dairy farms are outfitted with. And so while you can't put your hands on it, you can see that the milk passing through this tank, so this is coming from all of our robots, this is passing through our plate cooler. So we're using our well water and we're pumping it around this pipe to help us cool the temperature of that milk so that it's that much less electricity that we need to actually cool it down. But what you can see, even though you can't feel it, but you can see there's a whole lot of condensation on that same pipe on the other side. And that's because the milk just went from 101 degrees to about 55 degrees. And then we only need to use electricity to cool it down the rest of the way to about 40 degrees. So that's one of the many things that we do on our farm to be energy efficient. And I didn't mention this before just because it's hard to show it behind me, but we have about 700 solar panels on the roof of our barn. And so we generate the electricity needed to run all of this, the lights, the fans, the coolers. And so we've done a lot to try to make this barn as energy efficient and sustainable as possible.
Very cool. So, Amanda, folks are wondering, going back to the robots for one other, I think, interesting question. How do the cows know to then leave the machine? A couple folks are wondering when they've stopped giving milk.
Yeah, so the inflations will actually release off of each teat as it finishes. So sometimes there's more milk in one quarter over another. So as soon as all 4 quarters, all 4 teats are done being milked out, it will spray a post dip on her, which is like an iodine solution. And that helps to just maintain a certain level of coverage to the end of that teat, so that when she walks out of the barn, we're protecting her udder and her teat ends from any kind of contamination. But basically, the door that she's been chewing that grain out of swings open. And so now she's having to confront the fact that there's probably a bunch of cows that are staring at her, waiting for her to leave so that they can come in. And so on occasion, they'll just hang out there and chew their cud and be like, so what? But for the most part, they're eager to keep on going with their day. And so when that gate opens, they usually meander right on out.
So, a couple folks are wondering, Amanda, about antibiotics in milk. How do you, as a farmer, as a part of this industry, ensure that those don't end up in our milk and other dairy products?
Yeah, that is such a critical piece to what we do on our farm. So we need to guarantee that every single drop of milk that leaves our farm is antibiotic free, that there is no residuals of antibiotics in this milk, because I'm feeding it to my family and I sure as heck want you to feel comfortable feeding it to your family. So we do use antibiotics as needed. We work very closely with our veterinarian, and in fact, we have a whole book of protocols for how we handle every single possible ailment that a cow could have in our barn. But in the case that a cow does need to receive a treatment, we enter that into our computer, and it then will tell the robot to throw out her milk for not just the duration of time that we're treating that cow, but for the withhold time beyond the treatment. And so the protocol in our barn is that the medication is recorded in the computer before it is delivered to the cow. But obviously, there needs to be checks and balances. So the milk truck driver, every single day that he arrives on our farm, he will push this button to say that he is ready to pick up our milk. And then at that point, we have a whole set of valves down here, but it will stop sending milk from our robots into our big tank, and it will actually start filling up this small tank. And the reason that we do that is because the sample that he takes from that big tank to test for antibiotics is a true sample, that is really a valid test of the milk that's about to get on his truck. So it's tested here, and it's tested again at the processing plant to make sure that there are no concerns about antibiotics in this milk.
Yeah, Amanda, you just mentioned processing plant. So when that milk truck comes, when and how long does it then take your milk to end up at the plant and on a store shelf?
Yeah, so some days this milk is going to West Springfield, so that's an hour and 15 minutes from the farm, and that is the butter and whey plant in for Cabot, for Agrimark. So actually, fun point, if you go to your grocery store and you see salted Cabot butter in the blue box, if you look on the back of the box, you may find the Freund family. So we're not models for any other type of publication, but Cabot decided we were handsome enough to put on the back of their butter package. But so some days our milk goes to make butter, and so I mean it's literally 1.5 hours from here. It's being processed in West Springfield. It's gone to the Guidus plant in New Britain, Connecticut. It's gone over into New York State as well to be processed. So, but I would confidently tell you that when you buy fluid drinking milk, real dairy milk at the grocery store, it's coming from within 100 miles of where you are. So, and that's 365 days a year. It's a fresh product, a local product every single day because our cows are being milked every day.
We've got a couple folks. This is kind of a deep question for you, Amanda. Knowing that your product, your cow's milk, is ending up in one way, shape, or form on a store shelf, what does that mean to you, knowing that you're getting to help feed families around New England, around the East Coast?
Dude, Rainey, that is the core of why I do what I do. Like, honestly, I mean, it's hard work. We work on Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving. Like, there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want to be a dairy farmer, but that, in essence, is why I do want to be a dairy farmer. Like, the fact that in this little corner, in the northwest corner of Connecticut, me and my family are providing almost 2,300 gallons of milk to our community every day. And what our cows are eating is also local. We're growing most of the forages that they're eating. So like with respect to a healthy food system that's utilizing local ingredients, like milk is like such an essential piece of that. And meanwhile, we're maintaining 600 acres of open space for wildlife, and we're protecting the waterway that passes through our farm. And like, I think that it's not just the food source, but it's also being part of an ecosystem and leaving the environment better for the next generation after us. So I loved that question. That was fantastic. And so at this point, we are going to let you do the next poll, and we're going to head back out to the dairy barn, and I'm going to show you our cow pots next.
Sounds good. We'll see you over there.
Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, we've got a couple other poll questions for folks. So these ones will pop up on your screen, and take a couple seconds with the family to come up with your answer. And we've got a couple for you here. So from 2008 to 2017, the carbon footprint of producing a gallon of milk shrunk by what percentage? So take a couple seconds, think about that one. Go here. So from 2008 to 2017, the carbon footprint of producing a gallon of milk shrunk by what percentage? See if we can get a couple answers here. All right, looks like we've got a pretty even spread. The biggest percentage going to 30%. The answer though, 50 folks got it right. It's about 20% reduction in producing a gallon of milk between 2008 and 2017. So thank you, folks. I think we had just one poll here. So we'll get back to Amanda and the action back in the freestall barn. So Amanda, I think this is a good transition question for you. A couple folks are wondering, how do you handle the cow manure? There's certainly plenty of it each and every day. And I think that's, I think that leads well into our next topic.
Yeah, it's like you planted that question. I couldn't have asked for a better question. So actually, we'll do a quick 180. So you'll see that there's a chain that's moving along the floor of our barn. So obviously, people aren't totally inclined to always show off the poop of their barn. Oh, look it. And when you know it, a cow gets right in the way. That's pretty typical. They're very curious and they're very nosy. But basically, we use something that's like a sled or like a squeegee that actually will move all the manure out of the alley of our barn. And actually, Rainey, how about this question for you? On average, how much manure does one cow make in a day?
Oh my goodness. 50 pounds worth of manure.
That was close. Double it.
Double it. 100 pounds of manure a day. That's a
Yeah.
lot of bathroom trips.
So when you think about it, our cows are about 1,400 pounds. So that is proportional, but we've got 300 cows in this barn, and they're each giving us 100 pounds of manure per day. That can really add up. And so dairy farmers all across this country have different systems to manage that because you have to. And so it obviously serves a really important purpose to grow that crop that's behind me. All of the corn and grass that we grow relies on the manure for a very important fertilizer value. But occasionally we might have more of it than what we need for growing our crops. And so my dad came up with this idea 20 plus years ago, and he saw that my mom was using peat pots, and he thought that fiber, that material looks a whole lot like the stuff that my cows are giving me. And so on our farm, we have a methane digester. So when this manure leaves this barn, it goes, and actually you can see the truck that it goes in. That's our poo encrusted poop truck. And if there's any little boys watching this, I hope that made them giggle. But so that truck will deliver the manure from our barn to our methane digester. We actually are capturing a renewable energy source. We're actually capturing a biogas from our cow's manure, and we're burning it, and that's how we heat our house. So instead of using propane or heating oil, we have a renewable energy source right here on our farm from our cow's poop. And so then from there, we squeeze that manure. I always do this. I'm not sure if that's not at all how we squeeze it, but just so you know, we squeeze that manure. The liquids are what we apply to those crop fields. The solids are what then eventually get turned into a cow pot. So to that point, my dad saw that there were these peat pots that just weren't breaking down in the garden so well. And so he thought, why couldn't I make something like that out of my cow pots or out of my cow manure? And so after many, many years of trial and error, and a lot of times I've told the story of it being kind of like Beauty and the Beast, where Belle was in town and she heard a big explosion and she looked back over the bridge and she saw a big plume of smoke coming out of the basement, and her crazy inventor father went running out. There was actually a moment like that here on our dairy farm, because as it turns out, manure is flammable, so it catches on fire pretty easily. So we had a couple of those situations, but here we are all those years later, and we've got a whole lot of different sizes that we're making. Something as big as this, which we made for a Christmas tree grower that might want to sell a live tree. And here on our farm, because we also have a farm market and garden center, we use something like this for growing our lettuce or like a mixed herb garden. We just started making this size pot, which is for a rose grower. And this actually is super unique. This is a corner. So for putting on like a door or a window, we are presenting our process and our material as a sustainable alternative to plastic or cardboard or styrofoam. But obviously, the merits of cow manure are most well known for the way that they benefit a plant. So you can see that there's roots growing right through this pot, and that when you're ready to transplant this plant, you can put the whole pot in the ground and there's nothing to throw away. And so this is a really cool alternative to single-use plastic, because there's a lot of plastic pots that get thrown away every single year. And so we've got a really cool alternative that's made right here on our dairy farm. Are there any questions about cow pots?
Yeah, so folks are very impressed, Amanda, that really nothing seems to go to waste on the farm. And as a farmer, how important is it to you to close those cycles, whether it's recycling water, whether it's getting 3-4 different uses out of your cow manure? How big is that as a farm?
Yeah, it's essential to what we're doing. I mean, dairy farmers are very, very innovative, and they come up with all sorts of crazy solutions. Let me tell you, when we first started going around to local stores selling a pot made out of poop, people laughed at us, you know? But now in 2020, when we're super conscious of climate change and single-use plastic, now it's like the most obvious thing in the world. But yeah, and I didn't mention this before, that water that actually circulates around our milk pipe, we then feed that water to our cows because they actually prefer drinking tepid water. They prefer drinking water that's like 50 degrees rather than ice cold water. So recycling is actually at like the foundation of everything that we need to do on this farm.
So, Amanda, folks are wondering, one, do the cow pots smell? Do they smell like manure?
That's a super common question. They actually smell kind of earthy.
Yeah.
I would say so one of my favorite things to do when I have a physical tour group here, I will hand out a cow pot, especially with kids, and I will make sure they pass it around. And I don't tell them what it is until after the last kid is holding it. But they can never guess that it's actually cow pot. Cow manure. It doesn't smell like manure. It just smells earthy.
Yeah. So you guys have the methane digester there, Amanda. We know that maybe that system doesn't fit at every farm in New England and across the country. But can you talk about other manure management practices that farms in general try to, abide by?
Yeah, so some farms do composting. So they'll actually spend some time creating windrows and breaking that manure down so that it is the right texture and quality for you to put in your garden. So I know some farms that do it as a bulk product and sell it by the truckload, or they actually bag it on farm. There's some farms that not only spread for their cropland, but also for other farms that might not have livestock. Certainly making cow pots is creative, but there are more and more farms that are installing methane digesters, not necessarily just for producing energy, but, well, that's obviously the end goal, but one of the cool things about what they're doing is that in addition to using their manure, they're also bringing in food scraps. So dairy farms can also be a place where we are helping other industries deal with their byproducts. So if you've got, a box of squash or tomatoes that went bad at a grocery store, that has to go somewhere. And if it goes to a landfill, it's going to generate greenhouse gases. If it goes to a methane digester, it can actually produce energy.
Yeah. Fun fact for you, there are about 26 methane digesters in New England. Pretty
But
impressive.
I actually did not know that. I learned something on this tour.
Hey, I've got a few fun facts up there. Amanda, since we're back at the cows, folks are also wondering, they can see that, as you explained earlier, the feed is up against the stalls there, or their area, the alleyway, excuse me. But what's the metal, what are the bars there, folks are wondering, and do the cows ever hurt themselves on them?
No, so this design is this is a true tested standard for a lot of dairy farms. And so we call these headlocks. And our cows get acclimated to them very early on. But basically, the way it works is that every Monday morning, I am doing herd check. So I'm going through and I'm checking Each of our cows, I'm giving them vaccinations if they need it. And so instead of chasing my cows all around the barn when I'm trying to give 7,002 her rabies shot, we come through and we will actually lock these, so I can just turn down a lever. And what it does is when she puts her head in, this is actually turned down so that this locks her in place. And so she is actually held here until I go through, I give her whatever vaccination she needs, and then I will release all the headlocks. So it's actually a really easy, convenient way to, with as little stress as possible, give our cows any kind of attention or medication or care they might need.
Yeah. So, man, it's about 7 o'clock now. Do you have a few more minutes? With plenty of questions still coming in.
Yeah, please. Let's hear them. And actually, as we're talking, I'm gonna walk backwards to see if I see my one of my favorite cows, to see if she might give us some licks while we're talking. So go on. What's the next question?
There we go. So I think an important one. Now that we're back in the barn, we see the cows here. Do any of your cows go to pasture, and what led into that decision?
So prior to moving into this robot barn in 2016, our cows did go out on pasture during the summer. Obviously, there's not much to do out there in the winter, and we relied on the pasture to be a source of nutrition. So even after the snow, we would have to wait for the grass to be a certain height before those cows could go out. But the fact that this barn is designed around cow comfort and wellness, and those robots rely on our cows having easy access to them, to be able to have 300 cows and enough pasture land that is very, very tight to this barn, so that if they do go out to pasture and they lay down on a hot summer night, they still feel inclined to come back here and get milked. And so for our purposes and being able to provide our cows this brand new barn with all of this technology, we actually stopped sending them out to pasture. But I would argue that we have done a lot to keep them so comfortable in this barn. And in fact, something I didn't mention is that they each get their own water bed. So each of our cows actually gets to lay down on a water bed. And I don't know if anybody on this virtual farm tour can claim the same.
Not me. So Amanda, on the waterbed, do they sleep on any other surface or product on top of those waterbeds? Folks are wondering.
Rainy, it's like you've been on this farm tour before.
Once or twice.
So actually, to the earlier question, so this is like a really perfect tie-in. So one of the other things that a lot of farms do is they will use that manure product, that dried manure, and they will put that on top of the beds. And so it ends up being a dry, clean substance that we twice a day will go through and we'll clean off any kind of manure that they left on the bed. But it's a nice dry material to go on top of that water bed. So you can see we found the cow that I was hoping we would find when we started this tour. She's got a lot of love to give, so it's good that she decided to come up to the bunk while we were doing this tour.
So folks are wondering, I think a couple related questions. Melissa Shed is wondering if each cow uses the same bed over and over. Do they like to stick with what they know?
So there's certainly, this is something that I've actually spent some time trying to evaluate. So we've met with a lot of different experts on dairy farming. So everything from the right kind of forages to grow to social behaviors by our cows. And they do claim that cows will eat in the same general location every time, and that they will often come to the bunk with the same collection of cows. So they've kind of got their buddies. I admittedly have not actually noticed whether or not they choose the same bed, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. And actually, on the topic of beds, something else that I wanted to share with you is that we right now are actually doing a study with about 40 cows in our barn to track how much time they spend laying down. That's a really important component to cow health and wellness. And so we know during the winter months, they spend about 11 and a half hours laying down in a 24-hour period. And we're wondering if they spend more or less time in the summer. So we've got these little loggers that are on the legs of our cows that we applied them last week, and tomorrow we'll take them off. We'll send them in for evaluation, and we'll get a sense of how comfortable our cows are in this barn and if there's any changes we need to make.
How does that cow comfort play into milk production? How does that help you be successful as a business?
It's everything. It's everything. A cow, you cannot take milk from a cow. She gives it to you. And so a cow that is not comfortable, just like a mom that has breastfed knows, if she's feeling anxious or stressed, it's really hard for her to let her milk down. Our cows are exactly the same. If there's stressors in this barn, they are going to be less inclined to be able to give us much milk. So we monitor and do a lot to try to keep those stress levels down. And actually, I don't know if you've noticed what she's done to my hand here, but when it comes to the suggestions for COVID-19 and washing your hands often, it's not a problem on a dairy farm, because the first thing I'm going to do after this tour is wash my hands.
Like you said, lots of love to give from those ladies. Amanda, can you talk about what kind of standards as a farmer, as a farm, what kind of animal care standards do you try to abide by, or do you need to meet or reach or exceed?
Sure. So 98% of the milk produced in this country is coming from farms that actually participate in a program called Farmers Assuring Responsible Management. So that's actually a third-party animal welfare program and audit that actually tracks and monitors and provides some guidelines for practices that we should have on our farm. And it's everything from the type of housing that our cows are in to ensuring, like I said before, that that newborn baby is getting 4 quarts or 1 gallon of high quality colostrum. So, I mean, 98%, just about all the farms in this country are participating in that program. But we have a lot of the service providers, the experts that come to our farm to give us advice on what to feed our cows, what kind of lights to use, what kind of fans to use. I mean, they're traveling all over the region and all over the country. So when they see something working really well at one dairy farm, they oftentimes are going to spread the word. And that's how we find out about a lot of it. Something else that's really cool that's happening right behind me, this is our very temperamental robot. His name is Juno, and this is the full extent of his abilities. He rides around this barn every hour on the hour, and you can see his job is pushing up the feed. So he is making sure that all day and all night, 24 hours a day, our cows have easy reach and easy access to their feed. And I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but as he's doing this, he's making a chirping sound. So if a cow is overlaying in her bed and she hears that chirping sound, that is her indicator that there is some fresh feed for her to go and snack on.
So, Amanda, I think it's plain to see the level and the amount of technology that you guys have on the farm. I mean, when you think back to when the farm was established in 1949, the amount of technology, the advancement in the technology, how amazing is that as a farmer?
It is, well, it's funny. We walked right by it before, but I oftentimes will show off our breeding wheel. And so it's basically just a board that has the dates for the year, and every cow in our barn has her number on that board. And so I like to tell people, after we've looked at my computer that has all the information about all of these cows to look at that wheel that's a very like rudimentary system. It's just got their number and a date, and we can track when they had their baby, when they got bred. But when that was introduced, when my grandpa was farming, that was considered new technology. So I mean, even though I think a lot of times people associate farms as being this kind of like rustic, traditional, old style, we rely on technology, from everything to the types of seeds that we're growing to the fact that this is a thermostat climate controlled barn that our curtains will go up and down based on the temperature outside. That we can actually, we do a genomics test on every heifer that is born here. So we actually can know what her propensity is for getting any kind of certain disease, or um, who would be the best mate to pair her with when it's time to breed her. So, and actually, sorry, I can go on and on. This is something that gets me like really roused up. Like, technology is so critical to what we do. But another really cool thing is that we can actually, I mean, all of the data points that we're getting from these cows, we can, I mean, we can make so many decisions and evaluations just by sitting in front of our computer. And so I've read that they're actually working on coming up with facial recognition software for cows.
Wow. Wow. Amazing to see, hear, and learn more about. I feel like, you know, being even a part of your world, you hear about something new every day, and it's just amazing. Amanda, I think it's hard to go through 2020 and not talk about this subject, but a few folks are wondering how you as a farm, the industry as a whole, has been impacted by COVID-19 and how you're working to move through that.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So in the beginning, I would say that early mid-March, I almost felt weird at the fact that a lot of my friends were suddenly having to work from home. Their kids were not going to school, and meanwhile, my days were exactly the same. These cows expect the same level of care and attention every day, regardless of whether there's a pandemic going on. And so initially, it certainly felt like we were a bit insulated from the pandemic, but the reality is we have a perishable product that we're shipping from this farm. Our milk needs to be processed very quickly once it leaves here. And so when all of the restaurants and food service closed down, that was a major disruption to our market. So while a lot of our milk goes to making Cabot butter that you find at the grocery store, a lot of it also goes towards making big bags of shredded cheese for pizza parlors, and big tubs of sour cream for going to cafeterias. And when that demand in food service just disappeared overnight, that had a huge impact on the milk industry for the dairy farmers, because there wasn't enough processing to be able to fulfill exclusively retail segment demand, so the type of product that you would find at the grocery store. So we're still dealing with the consequences of that, because COVID's not over. I mean, it's actually becoming a worse problem in parts of this country. So we've done a lot of things to try to kind of roll with the punches, but it's hard. It's hard for all of us, but we certainly are feeling the implications economically as a result of COVID.
Well, Amanda, you certainly inspire me every day with the hard work, 24 hours a day, 365 that you, your family, and every other farm in New England does put in. I want to ask you one final question. We're getting on to 7:15 now. If there's one thing that you want all of our participants, our viewers, to take home tonight, or to leave the virtual tour with tonight, what would that be?
Oh, I'm probably going to give you more than one. I apologize, but I'm going to give you more than one. But that there is a great, like, milk doesn't just show up in the grocery store willy-nilly. There is so much thought and care and attention that goes into every single component, from how we take care of that newborn calf the moment she's born, to how we ensure that the milk that is getting picked up from our farm is stored and processed in the best possible way, to the people that are working in our processing plant to make sure that it is a quality and safe product to get sent to you. Like, it's more than just what's happening right here on this farm, but it certainly starts here, right? But we rely on so many people along this food system and supply chain, to make really good quality, healthy products for you. And the fact that our milk is leaving our farm and it is getting destined as a food product, sometimes within as short as 2 days. But we are focused on doing what's right by our cows, because without them we would be nowhere. We're doing what's right by our land, because we only have just so much of it and we need it to continue to be productive and growing some good healthy crops for our cows. And what's right by our community, because if they're not supportive of what we're doing, and if they're not buying into us doing things the right way, then it's not going to be so easy for us. So I would say that my favorite part about being a dairy farmer is hosting people on this farm and doing exactly this and showing you that there is nothing that we're trying to hide here. We are proud every single day that we are providing our family and yours with a high quality, nutrient dense product. The fact that one serving of milk has 8 grams of protein, there is not a single alternative beverage that comes close to being able to provide that same nutrient package. All right, and that's where I'm going to wrap it up, because otherwise I could just go on and on.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much to you, your family, everyone there on the Freund farm for hosting us all tonight. We really appreciate it. Thank you for that amazing tour. Thank you to our New England dairy team on the farm with you, capturing all these amazing shots that we got to see tonight. And thank you most importantly to all of you who tuned in tonight, asked all of your questions, certainly many, many more than we had time to answer. But with that said, please engage with us on social media. Check out newenglanddairy.com. Follow Amanda at CowPotsGirl on social media. We are happy to answer all of those questions, over the next few weeks. So a quick reminder, you will receive an email containing the link to this recording. So please check that out after the fact. And again, just thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Amanda. Amazing.
Thank you so much for coming.